Nice last week, I think. I think it was last week. He drives like a cranberry colored Camry or something.
Right. Yeah.
Or
Hyundai.
Hyundai, okay. So anyway, yeah. It's good. And I don't know if you've ever met Chuck Phillips. He's the one that he bought a Cherokee 6, but he doesn't have a pilot's license, so he's flying with Amber.
Oh, yeah?
He finally sold it the other day. It's taken him about 50 or 60 hours. It's not that he can't fly, his approaches were too fast. He's coming in with that Cherokee and that low wing, that ground effect.
Yeah.
But he finally sold it yesterday, I think, or the day before, so good for him, too.
And side by side, all the heat from the engine just kind of sprayed up. The outrigger is, man, it's caused life. I'm just trying to sit back a little bit. It really gets.
Let me show you real quick.
In September.
How are you doing, Bob?
In October, it can still be just relentless.
Oh, she's pulling herself up.
Yeah.
Damn, bless her. It just takes every fiber in her body.
It does.
Wow.
I was thinking, all right,
Now, did she just start that in the last few days, or what? Or has she been doing that for a bit?
Well, she did that at rehab at Brooks.
So you made this.
I made that a couple weeks ago, and she's been doing it some. And so she agreed to make that video because we're going to go see the surgeon. And I'm about to take a picture to show Dr. Q.
Right.
So she agreed to do that.
So
It is terrible.
is that the next step? I mean, I know this is a little premature, but how far is she away from a walker if she can do that?
She's a little ways yet.
Well, it's there now, and she's there.
Yeah.
Hey,
And then the next time
All
she stood
right,
up,
we're going to get started. 4.
that's good.
and then she wore out.
Sure. Yeah. But if she can do that every day, she's gonna.
Right. Yeah.
Not in that wrong chair, careful.
Hold on, we're gonna get to that meeting back at Camp Blanding, so you're gonna introduce.
No, I already briefed everybody who matters.
Okay, all right.
How are you doing?
Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. It is August the 1st, 2023. It is 6:03. I will call to order the Keystone Heights Airport Authority August meeting. Ask everyone to please stand for prayer and then pledge of allegiance. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the freedom that we exercise tonight to assemble together and to do the business and work of the airport. We thank you, Father, for all of your blessings to us. Thank you, Lord, for keeping our first responders, our military men and women safe and in your care. Give us wisdom tonight as we do the business of the airport. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Andrews, roll call, please.
Chair Kirkland,
Here.
Vice Chair Fryer,
Here.
Camp Blanding Representative, get your name,
I'm Jay Robinson,
Roberts. Okay,
and Colonel Allen is here.
great. Mr. Dejanay,
Here.
Mr. Ludwig,
Here.
Mr. Van Zant,
Here.
Mr. Seamer,
Here.
Ms. Rogowski. Here. Mr. Prang, Ms. Whitney, And Mr. Sherbach.
He's here. He's talking with a tenant outside in the lobby. All right, thank you. And we'll let the record show that we do have a quorum for this evening's meeting. Any public comments, Ms. Jennifer, have you received?
I have none. No.
Okay. Our second item is the consent agenda. You had received by email, and you also have in your packet the minutes of the July 12th, 2023 board meeting. You also have the June 2023 financials. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I have one question.
Can I get a second?
Second for discussion.
Are you going to second it,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Van Zandt?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. And what's the question?
On the past months, we've been getting a profit and loss and now versus actual. Thank you. And we were getting, it was a budget balance sheet. And it wasn't last month, and I didn't catch it last month. We didn't get one. And we didn't get a balance sheet for this month. And the reason I'm asking is under the balance sheet for the last year and a half, there's been a line item number 163,000, timber reforestation, with a balance of $86,998.63. I don't see it in the new budget anywhere, and I don't see it addressed in
In the budget or in the report?
either. There's not a balance sheet that's in our packet, and it's not in the budget that was presented. And I want to know, is there some under line item 163,000, the reforestation, where did that $86,000 plus dollars, where is that at?
So that's on the balance sheet,
Yes, sir.
right? Okay, so let me ask you this, and I apologize. I'm not sure. I know Ms. Rebecca Williams said that technically we don't have to have the balance sheet in our financials. It doesn't change that frequently, but we can certainly make that available to
Well, I
you.
was just wondering where it was in the budget for the 23-24 budget year.
Okay, can we address that as a separate item?
Sure.
Okay, so just for the consent agenda, then are we good with
Yes, sir.
what's presented?
Yes, sir.
So we have a motion, a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Make a note of that. All right, Mr. Pring is actually down at Florida Airports Council convention that's been going on. Ms. Whitney is not here. Mr. Taylor is also actually out of the country, so we're going to jump down to my items. And what I'd like to do is jump down to the last item that's under mine, and that's the bylaws revised verbiage. In your packet, if you'll go to the last 2 pages of your packet, what you will find there is the information that our attorney presented to us last month and reviewed with us. And we had gone through this as far as a lot of this dealt with the voting of the chairperson that needed to be fixed within our bylaws. So he had prepared these sections that address that. And what we need is a motion to approve these amendments to get them enacted.
I'll make a motion that we accept the changes to, do I need to list each article?
As presented would be okay.
as presented.
Okay, as presented.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Can we discuss these?
As soon as we get a second. All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. What's the discussion?
To go over a couple of the things that are, I want to clarify, just make sure that we all are on the same page. And I know there was a lot of confusion when it was all explained, and it was in the previous meeting. So as far as the chairperson having a vote, there's also the statement in there about the having a vote when there is a tie. Does that mean that the chairperson is going to have essentially 2 votes?
No, the issue with the tie is for the ex officio member of a committee.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're the chairperson or whoever the chairperson is, and we do have a committee set up, and right now we don't, and I know we discussed that in the last meeting as well, that this pretty much is the setting that we've had, for some of us that have been here for a shorter period of time, then does that still mean, if this is our only setting, does that mean that or do we need to make sure that that's written a little more clear, or is that,
Well, I don't know. I
does
think,
everybody take that as being clear
I
the way
think
it's
the
written?
attorney cleared it up pretty good, that's referring to a subcommittee.
Correct.
So if there was a
That may be
committee of
4.
3 people or 4 people,
Right.
then the chairman would be the tiebreaker.
That's
And the
correct.
chairman would be the tiebreaker.
But right now, we've only got 6 people voting, correct?
Correct.
So now,
So
the
you're
really,
not a
the way
tiebreaker,
I see
3, 1,
it-
that's a whole nother issue.
the way it reads now is during standard voting, everybody has an equal vote, including the chairman.
Correct.
Yeah,
With these
Within,
changes.
well,
with these changes.
And I think that was the intent with the bylaws before. It was just unclear. There was a couple different changes that need to be done.
Right,
Because our
right.
charter states that the chairperson shall be a voting member. Now,
Yeah, I think this makes it a little more clear.
yeah, the ex officio part is a committee, a subcommittee of this that,
Of the
Right.
board.
yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
so in regular meetings, you would vote,
Correct.
but if we developed a subcommittee, say for hangar rehab, and there was 3 of us, or, well, it wouldn't be 3, it'd be 4, and we couldn't decide, 2 of us voted yea and 2 voted nay, and ex officio, means you're not even at the meeting, I'm assuming, or you could be or couldn't be, then he would be the tiebreaker, only on a subcommittee, if that makes sense.
right.
And that's what had to be clarified within these revisions.
If everybody's good with that, if everybody thinks that that looks clear like that, I just wanted to make sure that that's something that if we need to address that, that should be something that should be addressed as well, just because the way that we've been acting, I guess the way that you guys have done before we even got here, that the chair wasn't voting.
That's correct.
And we were doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
There was a conflict in the bylaws, I think.
Well, there were several.
A contradiction.
With the 4 mandatory.
Yeah. Well, I think this
That's
clears it up
clear
very
that
well,
too, right?
the way it's been edited.
Right. Yeah, and that's when I had addressed it with Mr. Taylor, and then he went back and reviewed all of the items addressing voting here. And then the question that came up with respect to Mr. Dajaday not voting at one of the meetings, so we had to get that cleared up as well. So that's what all of this addresses, and we'll amend our bylaws to fix those items. Any other questions?
Now, sorry. No, go ahead. Another one I have before, are we going to go over each one of these, or we just talk about each one?
Whatever you want to
These
talk
were that
about.
package that Mike sent out, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, they've been sent to you for
Did you
review.
read them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, no, I'm not doing to ask questions, I want some discussion on some of these, because
Okay.
like the next one that I was gonna bring up would be about if you abstain your vote. I know that what was presented in the packet there by, Mr. Taylor went back and put up for potential change would be that basically if we, if the member just doesn't vote, then it's not counted as anything. And I personally disagree with that, because then we start going against the state statute that specifically says that you cannot abstain from voting. I mean, that's what we do. And then it says, clearly says that you may not abstain from voting.
Okay, but remember that the state statute, no attorney general has addressed the state statute with respect to a separate dependent district. There are attorney general opinions on the state level for independent special districts. So that was the reasoning that by law, as Mr. Taylor told us last month, there's no case law out there that addresses that.
And he had also mentioned too, he wasn't going to tell us which way to go as far as that went, and that when it came into the dependent or the independent side, he said, that's a whole nother thing all in itself. But, and again, this is something that you guys have been operating like this for as long as you've had bylaws. And I think it matters. I mean, I personally believe it matters because, again, that's our only job, is to come in and discuss issues and vote on issues. So I just, to completely take the person out of the game, it just kind of doesn't seem to make sense.
The time that I've been on the board, I've never seen anybody abstain. I've seen recusals, and I have recused. But that, you have to have a reason. Right. And Jim went over that too.
Yeah,
so really there should be no reason why anybody wouldn't vote.
Right. Because
it's not a popularity contest in here. You either vote yay or nay.
Yeah, if there's a conflict of interest, and it clearly states all of that in the statute, and that makes perfectly good sense. But as far as just not voting when a vote is up there, taking that away, I personally believe that that's not something that I think that we should do.
How would you think it should be worded?
I think pretty much the way that it has been, is that you cannot abstain from voting, and then if you do, it's basically, it will come across as a no vote, because, again, sorry.
You had a comment?
I do. So this is something that I was looking at when the bylaws were sent out, when you sent them out. I had conversations with our city attorney, Mr. Commando, and then I also brought it to our city county managers for conversation and discussion. Florida statute requires a vote, no questions, unless there's a conflict, and then you have to fill out the paperwork. With being a dependent special district, I understand that there's case law on independent special district, but the Florida statute and this board being appointed by a governing municipal agency would require you to follow those statutes. So the understanding that I've been able to get from other municipalities and as our attorney is that you are just simply not allowed to have your vote not count. If you choose not to vote, it's a vote against the motion, in opposition of the motion. So, and I understand that there's other case studies for an independent special district, but that's also not appointed by a governing body.
Right. So if we struck the last sentence, looking on page 2 of the revisions, would that be acceptable to the board?
Yeah, and I mean, as odd as it is, the way it's written is if it were to say, member refuses to vote despite being required to do so, that member's vote shall not be counted as a yay vote. Which kind of says the same thing, but really,
I would recommend
we should probably just kill that whole sentence.
Yeah. If we're gonna adapt it here tonight, I would adapt it just to go back to, if you don't vote, you have to recuse yourself and fill out
because of conflict of interest. Right.
It's strictly for that, though.
Yeah. I mean, I get we're all new. Well, some of us are new, some of us aren't new, getting used to each other and hurt feelings, but all that, if you're going to accept a political position, then you got to vote. Well, unless it was like my father's architecture firm up to design a new hangar, then no. I'm going to recuse myself, and I'm going to state for the record why, and it'll be known by then. But
Well, that's the whole point of the city appointing us, is to do a duty. And if we disagree with that duty, I mean, you shouldn't be on the committee, in my opinion. So I agree. You should have to vote. I really believe you
The
should.
statute requires that as your
And,
appointed by a
Sure.
and the
Yeah, and
only
I-
recusal would be, like I say, is a conflict of interest, and then you state that, and
Yeah,
then,
I think we didn't abide by Florida statute, and I don't know, and I hate to even, so I won't, but the attorney that we have versus every other governmental attorney I've ever talked to, and we are a governmental, you might as well, for Florida statute purposes, be an elected mayor or commissioner or whatever. Because
We're under the sunshine law.
Well, you're under that, but you can't hold this position and run for Clay County Commission. You can only be one political appointee, period. So you are that, so you have to either vote or have a reason to recuse yourself. And I don't think we need to restate that. I don't think that we're in line with Florida statute with that last sentence there. And if we change it to be an abstained vote is a yay or a nay or whatever, I think we're wrong again.
Yeah, I think just striking that last
describe
out.
this line.
I mean,
I think the last sentence, because the voting requirement, and it lists the statute, the Florida statute there, talks about governing, it governs this body. So the vote of the members shall be taken by yeas and nays and recorded in the minutes, and then strike the last sentence about refusing to vote and then it not being counted as anything. So, or is that agreeable to the
I would
board?
agree, yeah.
so then if somebody doesn't vote, the exact scenario we had the other night, that was 3-2, does, if it was 3 yeas and 2 nays, then does, by striking this last sentence in all of our minds, that means the motion carries or doesn't carry?
No, I think
Well,
what
they
we
have
got,
to vote.
no, I think what we got to
gotta vote.
realize is that everybody has to vote.
You've got a duty.
You don't have a choice unless there's a conflict of interest.
And I believe that the
Right.
statute does state what happens if that scenario, if there is a flat-out refusal, you're not going to vote. It doesn't matter who says what, but you're not going to vote. I believe that the statute does have language handling that. So that there are statutes in place that protect the board from that situation.
Okay, I'm good with striking the last sentence.
Everybody else
Yeah,
good with that? All right, what else do we want to look at here?
The next section too, under checks, drafts and other, et cetera. The way it reads to me is that we have to say, as we just passed around that packet for everybody to sign to be a signee, that it has to be done by appointment. And I said this last month, I thought that it said in the bylaws that the bylaws said that they're going to be appointed. And so are we not appointed? I mean, how are you designated?
As far as, well, what it's stating here is clarifying that we need to have a resolution that addresses that all of the board members will be signing on our accounts.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Right.
So when are we going to make that resolution for all of us that signed on that line tonight?
I was going to address that tonight.
Oh, okay.
But we need to get this fixed. I guess that's the thing. This is one of the fixes that's got to be done
Okay.
in order to go there, so.
Because everybody kind of looked at me crazy last month when I said that the way I read it, you had to have a motion from the board to be a signee, and everybody looked like I had 3 heads. And now you're going to address it tonight. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Well, do you need to address that before we pass this? What if there's a conflict then? Or does this address that by taking this vote? Does that resolve that matter.
No, we still have to have, that what this is saying is that.
Well, I'm agreeing with you. I mean,
Yeah,
same shit.
so we're gonna have to have, I guess go ahead and do the motion, and then we're gonna have to have a resolution saying who is going to be on the signing card.
That's correct. So this is part of the amendments that we need to implement.
Right.
And then from that, we will see this
So
particular
what if
item.
it gets voted, though? What if there's a vote that says nay, we only want the chairman and the vice chair to be signatories? So we're going to have to go back and revote this then? That's what I'm saying. If you pass this now, this is making a statement, correct? And then what if that gets voted down? They don't want to sign checks. Or we're going to have to go back and undo this. That's what I'm just saying. Are we putting the cart before the horse? I don't know.
I think everybody's already signed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've signed
Yeah,
But this,
but
all this is saying is that all members of the board are eligible to be designated as check signer.
right.
That's all it's saying.
And then you have to be designated by the board. And a motion will have to be made designating us. So they're two separate things.
okay, so the
Once we get through with this,
resolution.
then we'll do the resolution.
That's correct.
Okay, so that does make sense.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Ludwig, did you have any other items? Anybody else?
Standard legalese writing.
Okay, I call for the question.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, back up to my first item. A couple of months back, I think it was either Mr. Seamer or Mr. Ludwig had asked about if there was an interlocal agreement with Jacksonville, the city of Jacksonville, for a crash fire engine. And Mr. Brown, Councilman Tony Brown, was here at that meeting, and he said that he wasn't sure, but he would look into it. And he got back to us with a response. Basically, the city of Keystone Heights does not have an interlocal with the city of Jacksonville, but Clay County does. So I guess that answers the question that we had there. Everybody good with that?
And I could just add something to that.
Okay.
And when this got brought up at that time, it was pertaining to if we needed to have any coverage for the snowbird competition at that time. And pretty much what I had looked into it because of what I do for my job. And I talked to the people there that would oversee if we were to do something like that. Before I move forward with that, I will say this, it was kind of pretty much brought to everybody's agreement there that that wasn't something that was necessary to have here because of the nature of what was going on. But once I did reach out to and talk to some of my people, they pretty much said that is something that is available, a service that's available if that should arise if the equipment is available. Right now, where we stand, we actually have a spare piece of equipment that could potentially be, but the difference is between an interlocal agreement versus leasing for an event, I guess if you want to call it leasing or writing up, is two completely separate things. Interlocal would be more if there was a major event that was going on in Clay County, there's what we call mutual aid, and you're going to, other agencies that are close by in other counties and surrounding cities will potentially come this way. That's kind of, all the departments will do that. But in this situation, that would have been we would have to write up a contract stating what we were requesting, how long we would request, because you're looking at fuel cost, equipment, manpower issues, those kind of things. So we had looked in, like I said, we talked about that a little bit at the very beginning, and this was all at that time right around the snowbird competition. And like I said, everybody pretty much was in agreement. Yeah, that's not something right now I think the airport was wanting to pay for because it's not something that we had to have.
Right.
So I had seen this email back then. This was back in March, and Ms. Searcy had forwarded that to me, and we were already discussing all that at that time. So, but that is the difference between an interlocal agreement and if we need equipment for an event. And if that ever does arise, somebody will let me know ahead of time. then I can touch base with all the right people and we can try to put something together if we ever have to have that.
It's good to know that we have that resource. That's good. Okay.
There would be a charge for it, probably. I mean, you'd have to reimburse them, so.
And I will tell you right now, that piece of equipment, it gets about 2.2 miles per gallon. So you figure that.
Yeah. And diesel costs a lot of money right now.
And with the way it weighs, you can't put it on a low boy and haul it down here.
Yeah, these things are huge, 3,000 gallons of water, 120 gallons of foam, these things are massive.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Ludwig, for that information. We'll keep that in mind. All right. Second item I had is lease verbiage. We've been discussing our T-hanger leases, corporate hanger leases, and tie-down leases, and you got a very large packet by email. And most of those we had seen before. We had talked about those changes. I wanted the board to have time to look through those, and if there were any questions about those changes that were being implemented, we could discuss that tonight. One of the things that, as Mike had started going through them and I started going through them with him, we were just seeing some differences between the two leases, and so we wanted to get everything consistent. We also had Mr. Taylor look over them, and he looked over them as well, and had a few changes that in fact, some of the changes that were there were implemented. And so are there any questions about that information that was sent out to you?
I do have some questions on that
Okay.
as well.
All right.
As far as leases go, I know that was a topic that came up early on in us coming here, and there was some discussion back and forth about all that. I was curious as far as why now? When, I don't know, how long have these leases been in effect as far as years go? And I'm not questioning all of the motives behind it, I'm just kind of curious why now as far as, because that is a topic that came up and, and I know, like I said, it became a very hot topic for a couple of meetings. So is it the timing because of that, because we needed to go back and re-review them, or is it just, I don't know, I mean, why now, I guess?
It was a combination of a couple of things. One, that we didn't have the consistency between them. Quite honestly, I had not looked at the leases as close as I have recently. That's the airport manager's job. That was one of the things that, as we had some changes in T-hangers as far as people were leaving and then new people coming in, when Mike started going through the leases, that's when we started finding, those issues, those ambiguities between leases. So I took it upon myself and sat down with Mike, and we walked through every T-hanger lease, every corporate hanger lease, our new tie-down lease, and made sure that we had consistency.
I'll tell you another thing that might have happened. I think I've had my lease 12 years, maybe. So I haven't signed a new lease in years. And I think what happened is the previous airport manager was making some changes but wasn't going back in. So it was an evolution, but to be fair to everybody, so everybody's on the same playing field, I'm assuming that's why we're doing this, to make sure everybody has the same verbiage and contractual agreements or whatever.
One of the big changes, Mr. Ludwig, was with respect to the verbiage on the rent section, where we addressed how that previously we had used a CPI for our increase. Well, that varied quite a bit, and then as we've seen in the last year, that CPI was huge. I mean, we all know, we've seen the inflation numbers, but there was some concerns that by tying it just to that CPI, we didn't have it really tied back to our actual expenses. That's why when I brought it to Mr. Taylor's attention, he was the one actually that suggested, well, why don't you look at an annual adjustment? And then I took that to our accountant, Ms. Rebecca Williams, our CPA, and said, look, here's what we're thinking about doing. How's the best way to do that? And her recommendation was that we take our QuickBooks and we look at our expenses from the last fiscal year, compare that to the present fiscal year, and then let that be our annual adjustment, because that's a hard number of actual expenses and increases or decrease. Obviously, it's been an increase. So that was one of the factors that was in there as well. So that needed to be fixed in the leases. Some of the leases had a 1, 2, 3 or blank number, for the year of the lease, when some of the others had just, okay, here's your primary term, which is the first year. And then after that, the lease goes month to month, which makes it easier for a tenant to say, okay, hey, I'm moving, I'm gonna get out of the hangar. Or somebody moving in. So it was a multitude of things that had come up that we realized, okay, we've got to go through these leases and get everybody on the same lease with respect to if it's a T hangar. Corporate hangars are a little different. So that's what drove all of these changes.
And again, I just, when I know Mr. Seamers was the one that originally had brought that up, to me, that seems like that was a legitimate question. And I know I hadn't been here at the time because of the way my schedule fell, and I had to miss those couple of meetings, and I was watching that from afar. And then when I finally did come back, and the meeting that I kept everybody so late that night, that was one of the things I had addressed in that, because I thought, again, as a board members, especially new board members coming in, that should be, we should be able, looking at everything. So that's all I'm saying. I'm just asking, was that a legitimate request at that point? Because you guys see, now that you've gone in there and looked, or Mr. Taylor, whoever is going in there and seeing the inconsistencies.
Well, his request was to look at every lease. He wanted a copy of every lease. And we said, well, that's a lot of paperwork, but you're welcome to come in and look at every lease. So he never brought up the issues about what I just mentioned about these other things, because those have actually come up here recently, especially with our budget, because some of the other language that changed in there is with respect to us looking at that change being made on our fiscal year, not on a calendar year, because basically what we were doing, we were subsidizing 3 months to when we were having to pay all these additional costs before a new rate started for the lease based on either CPI in the past, or as we're going to talk about tonight, annual adjustment.
Looking at the rent section verbiage of the lease, just kind of drove to looking at the rest of the verbiage,
Yeah, it's
making sure everything looked as it should.
right.
So I'm with you on all the T hanger leases. I think I understand what drove that. I think it makes sense. On the corporate side, and I got really sideways and missed 2 meetings and totally forgot that you said you were on shift on the Tuesday and moved to the Wednesday, and I had a thing with my oldest son. But anyway, on the corporate side, and I guess Mike, David, somebody that's out here more often than I, have we had anybody, College of Missionary Aviation, the P3 guys, anybody saying, oh, holy smoly, this is going to just ruin us, we're going to have to pull out, this messes up our whole...
No, because their leases weren't affected. The only ones that we're dealing with here are T hanger leases, corporate hanger leases, and our apron tie down. Now, I do have
Corporate.
The
corporate being the 4 corporate
We
hangars that
call
we
it
have.
corporate because of its size, it can hold a jet. But you're probably referring to commercial.
Yes.
And Rockland would be considered commercial, but don't confuse corporate hangar. It's still individuals renting.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And weren't our hands tied to maximum 3% per year?
On some contracts, they were. There was
So
verbiage in
inflation
there that had
outruns-
addressed that. Unfortunately, you may have been on the board in June of 1999. Gilbert Reed was the chairman.
No, sir, him and Mr. Powell tapped me on the shoulder in the Keystone Inn and said, we're looking for some fresh blood. 2 weeks later, I went to Fort Rucker for 2 weeks, came back, and I was on the board, and they were off. I didn't fill out a stitch of paperwork. My wife read it to me on the front page of the Monitor. You had to live in the city.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Right.
Good notification method.
Well, so here's an example of a corporate lease or a land lease, actually, the FAA refers to them as ground leases. But that contract was for 25 years. It's coming up next year to be renewed. And in that, there's a limitation that they stipulated and they signed the contract, whoever the board was back then, 1.9%. And they're paying a pittance of what the value of that acreage is right now, 285 plus acres.
You're talking about the track over there?
Yeah, the whole firm area.
It's actually
So
338.
I was gonna say, I thought you said it was 330.
It's very underpriced, but I would think we could have a judge or a arbitrator look at that, but
that's another subject.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, that's an example of where we were capped.
Corporate and
Yeah, we're
commercial
stuck
are
there.
different.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so their leases, however, what they got put them in, and I think I can take the blame for anything around the 9/11 era, plus or minus 2 years.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind. All right.
blame you later.
Okay, any other
Last
questions?
thing I have is just, and I was kind of curious because I think we ran into this issue in the last meeting too with like the budget. And that's like with the packets that we get, that we're physically getting while we're here, doesn't have the leases in them, like what we're being sent when we get the email. Is there any reason why that's happening? That we're not, and then like,
42
I
pages.
mean, I know it's a lot, but
Times 10.
yeah. The same like, because I believe the budget was not in the last one either, and it's just, and I know we can go back and we can look at digitally what we have or whatever, but when we're voting on these, you know, having the copy of what we're voting on in front of us. I'm just curious as to why that might be the case there. And if we should have, I mean, if we should have that in front of us,
I guess you can.
just to make sure what we're voting on matches up with what we actually physically have with us.
Well, you can do two things. You can make it a cost and a duty of the airport manager to print out a big 3-inch, 3-ring binder before every meeting, and we all pick them up whatever time agreeable, 5 weeks beforehand. This is late 90s Clay County School Board.
No, I promise you that's not a good idea.
All right, I'm just saying the two ways that you can do it, or you can have everybody bring their computer
Laptop.
and
read
the
it
whole
off.
agenda item has every backup. So when Mr. Kirkland puts on interlocal agreement update, all the interlocal agreements we might be discussing or all the lease verbiage we might be discussing is right there. So those of us that type with 2 fingers will take a second and pull up the PDF, and I hate reading off PDF, but I will do it. We'll get a core here. And then you can even vote electronically. I don't think we need to do that, but we could just make it to where we all bring our laptops. But if you're like our age, you think if somebody's looking at a screen, they're not paying attention to you talking, they might be doing both. Hopefully as aviators, we can appreciate communication and.
I used that email to go to sleep the other night. I was having trouble
I know the
sleeping.
city addressed this a couple of years ago, so Ms. Rotowski, would you share with us?
Yes, so during COVID, courtesy of however the funding came raining down upon us, the city was able to purchase the laptops for the city and the airport. The purpose of the city moving to individual laptops as opposed to just having an email was exactly that. Packets get upwards of 100, 200, 300. When you got your audit and your budget in there, you're looking at a 500 plus packet, and that's a lot of work on staff, and that's a lot of trees that we don't have anymore.
We already sold them.
Yes. So with that being said, the packets go out and it is friendly that you can click on it, move forward as a city. And that was the purpose of that, is so that you can see exactly what it is that you're looking at right then and there. You know what you're voting on. That's the form of public record. That's the packet that gets published. And so if there's any questions, it can go back to the minutes and then what was issued in that packet. I would strongly encourage you to go that route because poor Mike doesn't want that mess.
No, I wasn't advocating
Yeah.
for course of action 1, and you should always
Yeah.
provide 3 courses of action, right?
So, but I would strongly encourage, that way each one of your members, and if they choose not to bring their laptop, then that's something that needs to be, that's on them. But that way, all the documentation is at their fingertips to be able to move forward.
Or you can print it out on your own printer at home
you
if
can
you
print
just
it
print a copy of. And all the leases, even though they discuss the different hangars, they're all essentially the same.
Yeah, the
So if
verbiage.
you printed one
same
lease,
for the
you'd
TA.
have it in front of you, it'd be,
I was just saying for our benefit, if, again, to bring it up for discussion to see what everybody, how, what their feelings on it, it's whether it's modernized into the computer age. I mean, I still use a watch that has like hands and all that, now digital. Stuff. So, yeah, I guess there's a bunch of old school people.
It is helpful that way if there are specific questions on a line, especially with budget, if there's a specific question on a line item or lease verbiage, that it can be pulled up and referenced verbatim as opposed to trying to remember what was on.
One of the other issues too is with our contract with our copier company, we get so many copies, and then once we exceed that, then they start really hammering us. So there's that would be a huge additional expense to us, and it's so cumbersome. I mean, I don't know. I just like.
and then.
Bring the laptop.
Bring your laptop, so.
Bring your laptop, print the agenda.
bring your
you can
laptop.
Make notes, and you've got the verbiage right there if there's
Yep.
conversations.
All right. Any other questions? Any other questions about leases? The leases that were provided to you in your packet, your digital packet. Are we good with those changes? All right, I need a motion and a second, and we need a vote.
I'll make the motion.
Okay?
I'll second that.
All right. Motion second. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. I got the vote. Yeah. Nobody noticed. I was like, yeah, okay.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, the third item, update on airport manager job announcement. Within your packet, several pages back, you will find a proposed, and I want to emphasize that word, proposed process for airport director / manager selection. Just as an FYI, the job advertisement and job description was emailed on July 18th, and there is a list on the following pages of all of the different places that those documents went to. We listed there on the job announcement, the open and closing dates that we had listed there. I was listed as a point of contact as chairman. And then the rest of this is proposed selection interview committee. Again, this is proposed as far as how we want to staff this. I know the city early on this year was interested in being involved with that. So I had listed here the mayor, and I had listed Ms. Ratowski being city manager, and she is the liaison to the airport. And then the rest of this, again, I was just sticking some dates in there to just show some movement. Obviously, this has got to be flexible because of schedules. I will tell you that we have 4 applicants already. I think all of them were from Embry-Riddle, I believe.
Cool.
So we do have some response there. And so I put some other steps in here, and there may be other things we need to do. And I bring this as an FYI because I know Mr. Van Zant, in his items on the agenda tonight, correlates with this. So if we want to kind of commingle those together.
Yeah, I mean, these are not
Let's do that.
sacred categories, but I did want to have a way of doing some objective selection. Obviously, you're going to interview people, and people are going to make impressions and whatever. I got whatever. But, I mean, you can, and if they're all from Embry-Riddle, now I'm making assumptions, people that are going through college for the first time, then some of this will be towards the lower end of the scale. And I don't care if it's 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. It doesn't have to be this at all. But you're asking somebody to not only run an airport, but to supervise people, to market it, to go lobby in Tallahassee, to interact well with city council, to interact well with this board. I mean, so there's just so many little pieces. You could easily add a bunch more in there, or you could streamline this and squeeze it together. And thanks, Shep, for helping me out with this. You know, I've done this kind of stuff. I used to oversee flight school board selection, like who's going to be the next pilot, who's going to do that kind of stuff. And so I think just some objective criteria to go on. So this person's reporting to this board. So my assumption was that all 6 of us, or even 7 with understanding the guards abstaining from voting was my last understanding after talking to the full-time JAG, would be the interview panel, and we'd come out with a score and they would get it if they're interacting with the city council but not working for the city council. If the mayor and the city manager, if we want to have a nine-person board, but so here's where the Type A former airfield commander set up airfields all over the world comes in. If I'm going to be on this board, I want to be part of this process.
I agree. And again, as I stated earlier on, this is just something I proposed because I knew those elements needed to be in place. And if we want to add, if everybody wants to be involved, I'm not opposed to that at all either. Logistically, I don't know how challenging that will be, getting everybody together to do that. And we're just discussing here. I'm not demeaning that by any means. So I do like the matrix idea. I think that's really a good resource when you have multiple people on a panel. I like the other idea. I think you had about some questions, maybe, I don't know how many questions we want to limit it to. If it's 5, if it's 10, and if that gets spread through the selection interview committee. Again, this is our first time doing this, guys. I mean, so let's hammer out the details here.
Let me just share real quick. You know, when I was at the college, Florida State College, I put together a similar scoring matrix whenever we were hiring someone to teach in our department or someone for our department. And I think it worked really well. You have some categories of some information that you kind of want to look at, such as education or previous experience. And, you know, everybody has something different. So, you know, put a score down for that. And it's a starting point for looking at an applicant. And then we always had a few interview questions that our committee had. We always had a committee in hiring. Before I forget also, so the job announcement has been shared with Florida State College, and it's also been shared, Pat Conway at the school also shared it with the management at Cecil Airport. So Ms. Turney at the airport manager and Tim Cox there. And so they're going to spread the word amongst Jacksonville, the job opening.
All right, so back to our bullet points here. What do we need to add in here? What do we need to change?
I would say if Charlie wants to be on this interview, I think you could add him, but this isn't a military tribunal. It's not a congressional. If you have a young person come from Embry-Riddle and you've got 9 people lined up here, you're going to intimidate the hell out of them. And I think if y'all had the 5 of you, if you want to do that. Now, because this will be, if I understood this correctly last month, especially since the 2 of you would be here, it'll be a 72-hour announcement before we do this, and the public can come in. If anybody that's on the rest of the board wanted to be here, but I don't think anybody else should be able to ask questions. I think you leave it to just the individuals you've got listed, and I think Charlie would be good on it. And
Ms. Lynn, you hire a lot of folks at the city. So what process there, and with respect to this too, what's your thoughts?
So Yes, I hire a lot of folks at the city. However, you're looking at an airport manager who reports to a board, as it currently states. A city manager, a county manager, or whomever else is going to go through a vetting process similar to a scoring on who's going to be interviewed. That interview is conducted by the body that they're going to report to, because that would just be how it is. The council would interview, the commission would interview.
I got a question. I don't know if you and the mayor are seeing this for the first time tonight. Did y'all want to be part? I'm not trying to be exclusionary, but it would be odd if they don't report to y'all to have you guys interview. And never in my wildest dream would I let somebody, like anybody that's going to work for whoever is hired, be part of the voting to hire the person. That's an abstract concept to me.
So, but with it being a board interview, just like a commission interview or a city manager interview, it's public. It has to be noticed. Therefore, council, different agencies are welcome to view, are welcome to be here. And I wouldn't, under any circumstances, vision that the board would then interview and then have that conversation right then and there. Generally, it's kind of go and hash that out a little bit in your heads, come back and have conversations about it.
Well, you still also, so when I was at Seminole, we did interview boards and we had a member of HR there, but we don't have HR between either the city or here. But we always had an HR person, and then I was required to have 3 supervisors, and they, just like you're saying, they shouldn't really have a say. Well, I didn't have a say either. I may have somebody from operations interviewing my people for supply management, but they have the professional wherefore and the vibes to get a good vibe to introduce ideas. And you're not gonna have the debate in front of the interviewee anyway. So I think it's still good to have.
Right, I would envision each person interviewing, coming in and get asked their questions, leave, have a 15-minute or however long we
How
need
did
to
you feel, or
discuss.
how did you score, or whatever.
Score them, pass in the score sheets at the end of that meeting, but, and hopefully people aren't interested in this. I've watched public interviews where you had 23-minute commenters beforehand, and that would really run off somebody coming right out of college.
Yeah, it just, but you still, what I'm saying, I think with the city, if you just take away the mayor's hat for a moment, or Tony's hat, or whatever, she's still a professional. She's had years in her corporate life, and Tony's had a business, and Lynn has been in management now. You still have that benefit, and they do have money in the game, It's still their airport, so.
Yeah, I'm not excluding the airport ownership. This is just really, I would have never thought of it like this, but my wife reminds me often that not anybody she knows thinks like I do, and I'm okay with that.
I would.
Mr. Brown, you had a comment?
Yes, sir. And thank you, but I've had the privilege or so of having to hire every city manager that City of Keystone's had, from the first one to Lynn. And the process is every council person is part of that interview. So every one of you guys, I would highly recommend, no committee, that you all are taking part of the interview process, because it's your vote, and you're going to have, and I like what Charlie's done. And we had a score sheet on every one of them, and I would recommend you have somebody there that can score. And our attorney scored ours. And but I would highly recommend every one of you be on an interview.
I agree with
Explain
that.
to me a little more about the attorney scoring. He
Tallied the score.
He tallied the
tallied
scores? Oh, okay.
He tallied it.
Okay,
into a
thank you.
spreadsheet.
I heard what you said.
No way, there's no bias or
Right.
like somebody
So, yeah,
cheating
so
or.
he took everybody's score, put it together, that way it was more friendly if this applicant scored 52 points. These are the categories that they scored, things of that nature. And then tallied that up for council's review during the interview.
Well, I agree. I think it would be appropriate for the airport as a whole to be part of the committee to interview the applicants.
I agree.
Colonel Allen.
I just had a technique question. I didn't know, is part of the logistical constraint you're concerned about, that was in up to 20 So is it a series? So often we hire about 5 different pay capacities of Blanding. And we do, sometimes it's a Fed guy, sometimes it's state HRO. But what'll happen is sometimes we get pummeled with applications. So we'll take the score sheet, and what it really does is invariably, there's one soft category. And it's a sliding scale. If you're hiring a 20-year-old E5, we don't expect them to have a master's and max out 5 points.
Right.
So the frustrating thing is, hey, by the way, maybe an AA is worth 3 points, but the fact that you've accumulated some college hours, effort, et cetera. Point is, sometimes we have to cull that herd down to top 5. So what happens is on those score sheets is you don't get that soft science that if I have great experience, but you have the college degree, but man, I just knocked your shoes off in the interview. That's where that soft vote comes from.
Yeah.
And I think we said other matters, if a kid just delivers, because as you said, the intimidation piece, by the same token, I can't imagine the burly guy gets out of the airplane, doesn't need to be intimidated here either. So sometimes that's not a bad thing. So I don't want to digress too much, but I guess my question was, if you're concerned about 20, tonight, after the public's invited, I guess, this could be your interview panel as they sit here. I don't know how you work all the public in, but my first concern would be it's a real popular, great gig to play, and a great gig to be part of, and all of a sudden you're trying to nail down 50? So what's the mechanism to cull that herd down to, here's our top 3 that made it through this process, now we're gonna interview?
Yeah, so we haven't discussed that. That's a great point. And I didn't even have it down for discussion, but what I think probably should happen is that we commit to this taking a couple of meetings. So on the 21st of August, we get together, us, public's invited, whoever's invited. And if we end up with 13 applicants and say these 6 or these 5 or these 8 are worth interviewing, or we just pin a number on it. The top 5, we could use the score sheet to call who we're going to interview, and then that, and maybe what I have here might count up 80%, and then the interview's worth another 20 points, so they've still got a small portion left. And again, this is not sacred.
No, but it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't know that everybody that applies gets an interview. You'll have applicants apply for a job that don't.
And that's the way I did it at the college, is not everybody who applied got an interview.
Right.
Depending on where you fell in the ranking.
Correct.
Well, I think what's interesting, because I know when we've filled other staff positions here at the airport, sometimes we'll get people filling out applications because that helps them with something else they're doing. They're just filling out a form.
Like
They have no interest,
employment.
because when we've called back, when Maria would call them back, for an interview, now they're not interested anymore. What's interesting with this so far is these 4 applicants that's all we've heard from Emory-Rill. So it's kind of interesting that we've not heard from these other technical colleges, and all of these, I spoke with their career services person directly related to their aviation program. So I know it was focused in to that group. I don't know. So
Probably didn't put it to the guys that are studying for their commercial pilot's license, put it to the airfield majors or something.
Well, the other thing you've got to realize is with the wages we're paying, this isn't going to be a career job for any of
No.
these. And if we're talking about a young man or a young woman that's 25 years old, this is just going to be part of their resume. They're going to work for us for 2.5 years and say, I managed an airport, and now I want to go to a bigger, and then we're going to be doing this then. But that's where we're at. We can't help that. We don't have the budgetary incentives. So it's the best you can do.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing then, we want our board to be part of the selection interview process, all the board, and also include the mayor and Ms. Lynn. Everybody good? Agreeable to that? Okay, Mike just was mentioned to me, we'll strike him off of this list. I put down the week of August the 21st to review applications, resume, develop that short list. Talk to me about, well, let's go back to this. if we only have 4 applicants, let's just say if we don't get any more applicants between now and the 17th,
You're going to.
that's going to be our short list. We're
You're going to
going to,
interview everybody.
okay.
Took care of itself.
It took care of itself.
Yeah.
All right. So then we will set up a time then to interview each of those. Because again, their schedules, I'm not sure. You know, a lot of these people are working now from what they've indicated on their communication with us. So, where do we want to go then from beyond our selection interview committee members? What do we want to do here on our schedule? Ms. Lynn?
Suggestion.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have a 6-member board plus the mayor and myself. I would strongly recommend that each board member submits maybe 2 questions. That way everybody's asked the same questions that's related to your specific field that you have with the airport. And then amongst that, I don't know if tasking somebody, but general aviation questions or general operating questions might maybe even be of assistance. And certain questions that should be asked that's maybe not related to your specific field in this. That way each applicant is being asked the same questions and come up with an interview question sheet that's going to be asked. Then those conversations they always spin out anyway. But that way that's coming ahead of time.
If you do that, I think that's a great idea, but I think everybody should be privy to those questions at least a week in advance so they can kind of study that in their mind. Because if you just ask them.
The applicants?
No, the board members and who's on it.
Oh,
Well, you said everybody should be allowed to ask 2 questions.
Well, you're going to send in 2 questions, and based on your background, they're going to be probably different than my 2 questions.
Right, but what I'm saying.
They should be. They absolutely should
But
be.
they need to be culminated or whatever, yeah,
Right.
and so that we can see them ahead of time. And again, so I ordered a book, or had Lori order a book from Amazon. There's some questions, in my opinion, we use this technique there, and I lost my book I had there. But there are questions that are generalized about the psyche, about the individual you're doing.
Sure.
Okay? Then there are career specific or to the field you're going to want to ask. And what we would do is somebody in that group, like if I was interviewing for somebody for supply management, I would come up with all the questions. But then I would submit them to the other board members or of the interview board and HR for approval. And that would give them time to understand them. Now, if we still do it, I like your idea. We can just throw in our own 2 or whatever. But just so we can see them ahead of time, if we're going to be involved with this, even if we're not the one asking the question, that'll give us an idea how to score the answer possibly. If we've got a question, well, what does this mean? Or what's the answer you're looking for? Or
And with that as well, I'd be happy to mediate, ask the questions. That way the board can focus on taking notes and it's your decision.
And that could work too.
I like that idea.
now, here's another thing. If everybody submits 2 questions, that's what, 12?
180 questions.
How many questions are we really going to ask each individual? I think we should
I've had
narrow
interviews
it.
from 10 minutes to 2 hours.
Yeah,
I think we should shoot for maybe this is just me again.
5 or
maybe-
6.
Maybe a 30-minute interview and have
Yeah.
5 questions, give them 3 minutes to answer, give them 2 or
Right.
3 minutes to tell us who they are at the beginning and 2 or 3 minutes to summarize and ask questions of us at the end.
yeah.
Like, are you going to require me to live in Clay or Bradford County? Are you going to require me to live within 10 miles of the red? I mean, they're going to have questions that we haven't addressed.
Right.
Stipulations that we may or may not even think are important, but.
Yeah. No, I think it's good that everybody might kind of submit 2 questions, and then from that pool, then we select, 5 or 6 questions that everybody gets asked the same question.
I think for a manager, you'd want more than 5 questions. That's just my opinion. It's a pretty serious job.
And then I would caution if you're going to select from that pool, it becomes public record.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're
Maybe
using
just
the
have
interview questions and then you're using
The matrix.
the matrix. So I don't know how many questions are fair. I mean, I don't mind if we do, especially if we don't, say let's, for sake of argument, cap it to 5 interviews, and if we have more than 5 applicants, we're gonna have a meeting prior to the interview meeting and get together and call the herd. And then at that, I think we should just plan on doing that to get our shot group tight.
Right.
Have one meeting to go over all the applicants to get together. We can go ahead and say this one's worth interviewing, this one's not. There might be only 4 applicants and one of them just not worth giving an interview to. I don't know.
Could be.
You know, but we can make that determination. At that point, we can take the 10 questions submitted and say, well, we really like these 7 or these 10. I mean, and then at that point, we can realistically, Mike or Lynn or whoever, whomever's going to contact the applicant, Mr. Kirkland, call and say, hey, plan on an hour with us. You're the first one. Be ready to go at 9 o'clock on August 28th or whatever the day is.
Right.
All right, so we're talking about doing a workshop then to kind of pull everything together so that we know exactly how the interview process is going to go, correct?
Either a workshop or a meeting. I don't know if what we call it, because we're going to make decisions and decide. So, I mean, yeah, but it's going to be more of even more of this free flow discussion we got now.
Okay.
But then we're going to make a decision on who to interview at the end of that.
Okay, so if we're going to make motions and take votes, then it needs to be a meeting, not a workshop.
Special meeting, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do a
Yeah.
special call. All right. A special meeting.
Now, did you say you wanted to review the applications then?
Well, yeah, and decide who, I
So
mean,
then
we
it'll
might
have to
only end
be-
up with 4 or 5,
it'll
but
have
we
to
might
be
get another
after
5 by then.
The 17th.
Well, it says on here the 21st.
No, it says the closing dates. I'm assuming you want their applications back by the 17th of August. Is that what's,
Well, that's when we're not going to be receiving any more applications.
that's the closing
That was
date?
just a window that we put out there. Like that came off.
But if you go down further, it says the week of August 21st, review applicants.
Yeah, I read that, but I'm just saying, our meeting would have to be after the 17th if we're going to review the applications. Not specifically the 21st. Sometime after the 17th when we get all the applications, right?
Yeah, he has it down here, the week of the August 21st.
Yeah, it says review applications, resumes. But,
Pick a date.
We want to have our special meeting on August 21st and then set up our interviews for like the 24th.
Okay, so 21st, that's a Monday.
24th is a Thursday.
Right, yeah.
Those work for me. No, I have conflict sometimes because of my work schedule, but those both work for me if that works for you guys. And we can shoot other ones out there if we need to, but.
now, these dates, August 21st, August 28th, that's not in any of the information that we sent out. We only did the job announcement because I knew there was a lot of logistics that we were going to have to work out internally to figure out how and when we could meet. So,
Oh, okay.
so we're flexible on the.
Okay, I wasn't even
schedule.
reading 28 when I said 24, but, you know, is the 21st and the 24th doable for everybody?
I'm good on,
I'm
I'm
okay
good
on
for
that, yeah.
either day. 21st would work for me. Miss Lynn, what's your calendar look like?
The 21st after lunch, we do have a budget workshop that morning.
Okay.
Is this going to be during the day or at night?
It's up to y'all.
Whatever y'all want to do.
It don't matter.
Y'all want to do it at 3, 4 in the afternoon? I don't care. For the special meeting, just to kind of hammer it out.
Yeah, the 21st.
Forever, yes, sir.
All right, let's shoot for August 21st. Let's do, how long's your budget meeting, Lynn? You think it'll be just an hour or two, or?
It's slated for 2 hours just in case, but it's from 10 to 12.
Oh, okay. Let's shoot for 3 PM. Is that good with everybody?
3?
Right.
Yeah, 3 PM. And Mike, would you make sure that that gets posted 72 hours prior?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now, for that meeting, we need to have our couple of questions, each of us with our couple of questions to be brought.
Yeah, I mean,
Sounds good.
if we could all email them to Mike a day or two before and let
Yeah.
him come in here with a list of 10 or how many ever.
To assemble them, yeah.
And on that, on the question thing, because I know you had mentioned about the questions pertaining to each of our, is it, you're talking about our chair positions or just their board in general? I
Just not necessarily your chair
I
position,
didn't know if
but
that's what you were looking
I'm
for.
sure that the questions you would think of would be directly from.
No,
your
let's focus on the individual positions and what we're responsible for, because it's like Charlie was saying earlier, you know, I mean, he's dealt with the Tallahassee side of it, so he knows specifically some questions, you know, or a question for that. Safety, security, I think yours needs to be there. So, yeah, let's stay within our areas of responsibility with our questions. So we want to have those questions to Mike by the 18th or the 17th maybe, and then Mike can email them to all of us.
The 17th, you said?
Yeah, let's put our deadline for questions on the 17th, and then Mike will get them emailed out on the 18th.
Are you going to distribute the resumes on the 18th as well?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to distribute the resumes on the 18th as well?
We could do that. We could do resumes and questions, yep.
We don't have an attorney. People, public records request all that. If some kid puts their street address on there, I mean, they don't need to.
Yep.
We all had to expose ourselves pretty publicly to just be on here.
It's
So there,
public.
by statute, there's certain things that's redacted, but it's all there.
Yep. Public records is there.
Yes, sir. No brain.
Mr. Chair, as a suggestion from hiring base commanders, it might behoove us, because of the age and experience level of the 4 applicants, that they come out and spend the morning here, because they fire off the resume, they're excited to get out here and go, holy smokes. And you may find that the list would call itself a little bit, number one, and number two, they would have a much better understanding of just seeing the operation. Some of them may have never been here. And we use this in the Air Force to say, hey, we're going to have a new support group commander. He owns the base, he operates the airfield. We're going to, talk to folks that would be interested in that position and have them actually come out and follow the support group commander around for half a day or something. Yeah, here's the security police folks, here's the fire department, here's base operations, and take a look at it as the largest Air Force Reserve Command installation that we had, like a $305 million a year budget that this person had a lot of inputs into. So that's just a suggestion that may help your selection process, get somebody that sees it and is enthusiastic and even more engaged when they show up for their interview.
It's similar. We do something similar to that with our projects now, in that Mr. Prang will meet potential contractors that are going to bid on a job out here ahead of time. A pre-bid meeting, or they'll want to come out and just look at the area, find out logistically what they've got to deal with if they decide to bid on the project. So what's the board's feeling on that?
I think we should make it, offer it to them. I mean, what day do we say we're going to notify them? I guess the morning of the 22nd. So, I mean, say, hey, in the next couple of days, you'd like to come out and get with them.
Offer them the opportunity.
Yeah.
Are we going to meet again on the 24th?
No. Well, we hadn't gotten that far yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, it closes, the window closes on the 17th. We can notify those individuals by email, the applicants by email, that if they wanted to come out and visit, then they could come out, make an appointment to meet with Mike, or I could be here too, whatever. But
we really could do that now, but then if they don't get an interview, that might.
Yeah. All right, so the questions, our questions our deadline is the 17th, Thursday, the 17th. Mike will be emailing those questions out with resumes on the 18th. And then we will have our special meeting on 8/21, Monday at 3 p.m. All right, where do we go next?
Pick a day and time slots for interviews.
Yeah.
Say again?
So I'd pick a day and time slots for interviews.
Okay.
Are you wanting to do that in the following week there? After that, like what you have up here, like you have the August 28th? Are you wanting to do it sometime during that week or?
We could probably do it anytime after the 21st, because I think we're going to have, so the 21st, we're going to get all of our organization together, the way we're going to conduct the interview, how it's going to go. So anytime after that, I think we can contact them and do y'all want to try to do one date for interviews or 2 dates? What's your thinking on that?
I think it really depends on how many we end up with in actuality.
Yeah, I agree.
If we all agree we're gonna interview more than 4 or 5 people, then maybe we wanna go into a second day of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would be comfortable calling the herd of 5 people based off reading the resume and seeing this, we're gonna have an idea if they're even close. I don't think we need to do 8 or 9 or 10 interviews. That's just me again.
So why don't we do this? Why don't, in our special meeting, why don't we set the date then for interviews based on, because we're going to have, you're going to have the resumes and applications. So why don't we do that?
Okay.
Not to kick the can down the road, but.
That will cut the 24th off because you couldn't post it in 72 hours.
And we could do it the next Monday or Tuesday if.
Yeah. I'm just saying that where he had proposed the 24th or Charlie had proposed.
What works for you, Bobby? Because I think
Yeah.
you're the most firm.
The following week, the 29th, I would be available. I would not be available for the 28th, but the 29th I would be. 29th, 30th.
Tuesday, the 29th?
It'd be the 29th, the 30th, and then Friday, the 1st of September, if we had to go that far out. So the 29th.
I would suggest Tuesday then.
The 29th.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Lynn, how does that fit with your city calendar?
I don't have anything on my city calendar, however, the mayor will not be in town.
I've got 2.
She will not be back in town until after
I hate to do
September.
this, stick in the
so
mud. I got 2 VA appointments that
It
will
might-
take about a year to schedule.
Yeah.
Put in the vice mayor or appoint another,
29th?
and we can handle that at our council meeting.
I do have-
That's okay, that way that we can.
Yeah, the 30th? Are y'all back on the 30th?
What was that, Charlie?
Or the 31st?
You can set through your process, and then it can be discussed on whether or not, I'll talk to you offline if we can do Zoom, or if council would like to appoint another member of council to sit in on it.
Okay.
That way it's not hindering by almost 2 weeks.
I can be available on everything up before the 24th. Then it's going to
There
be
would be
1st of September.
no way for that interview to flip that quick.
Yeah. So again, we want to just go back and on our special meeting on the 21st, make that decision then
Yeah.
On the
what
following
interview,
date.
on the interview date.
Did I hear that everybody's available on September 1st? Was anybody?
Works for me.
Okay.
Friday, September.
Friday, no, you're not.
That's Labor
Labor Day
Day.
weekend.
I'm going to be out of state.
Okay.
City council is on the 4th, I guess. Are y'all moving the city council meeting? So it's moving to the 11th?
Yes. And then-
Our board meeting will be on the 5th. September the 5th. So what's your schedule looking like?
I'm good for
Bobby?
the 5th. I'm available on the 5th.
Well, the 5th, we have board meeting.
Yeah, oh, you're talking about going back to identity?
Yeah.
Because you
Look
said
at scheduling it for the week
Yeah.
of the 28th.
the 20, the
That way you can
29th or
have
the 30th.
conversations at your board meeting.
I'm okay on the 30th. I don't know if that works for anybody also.
Say again, Ms. Lynn?
I said I would go back to the week of the 28th. That way you can have conversations at your board meeting. For your for the interviews, go back to the week of the 28th.
Yeah.
The following week after the special meeting. And then that way you have your interviews conducted and it can be a point of discussion at your next board meeting.
Okay, so,
Okay, yeah.
but Charlie, you had conflicts on the 28th, 29th?
Just on the 29th, I can do it on the 30th, the 31st, first, or the first is going into Labor Day weekend. But yeah, the 30th is fine with me. 28th would be fine. You're on a shift
And on the 30th and
on
31st.
the 28th.
Yeah.
28th.
Yeah.
Are you good on that one?
For the 30th?
30th? All right, let's set 30th.
Yeah.
All right.
Or we can knock out.
Yes, all right.
I want to start those at 9.
What time you want to start, gentlemen, ladies? What's good?
How about 9?
9 a.m.?
9 in the morning.
All right. Very good. Okay, so we should be able to get that hammered out on the 30th. And then we'll have our, let's go back to September real quick for our meeting on the 5th. Is that still, I'm going to be out of state that weekend, but I should be back, for the meeting by Tuesday. Do we still want to leave our meeting on the 5th?
I'm fine with that.
I'm okay with
Everybody
it.
good with that?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll let that stay as is. Okay. All right, thank you very much. I think that was time well spent to get all those dates and suggestions and ideas hammered out. All right, let's see, that completes all of my items. Mr. Fryer.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, what?
Resolution. You got to make a resolution to put people on to sign for the checks.
Yes, thank you. I was looking on my agenda items, but we did talk about that. All right.
Did you also talk about the annual adjustment? Is that for the rate?
No, that was next.
Okay.
I was going to that next. All right, let's do the resolution on the appointments of the board members for signing checks, drafts, et cetera, per our bylaws.
Do you have a resolution drafted to vote
I
on?
don't have printed out, but do I need one printed out?
For advertising purposes on the agenda?
Really? Okay.
Well, just as an agenda item to vote, on, yes.
Usually some
All right.
backup.
Yeah,
We will hold this document and we will put it on the agenda for next month. How about that? All right. We'll add that to the September agenda. All right, last item I have is the annual adjustment. We had talked about this, you had seen this term in our leases, the revisions that we did there. I asked Mike and Lori to go back and look at fiscal year 2022 compared to date fiscal year 2023 on the expenses. And I'm going to ask Mike to come on up here and share what he found out and what that difference looks like as far as the increase in expenses. So, Sherbot.
We looked at the, just the expenses, what it costs to run the airport from the same time period, fiscal year 22, 23, as we did from 21, 22. And the number we came up with was a $93,000 difference on just the same things that we do year after year. One of the things we budgeted for was the insurance for the airport. We budgeted for $80,000, and that was $5,000 more than we did last year. Well, the number came in at $88,000. So we were looking at a 7.6% increase. And that kind of precipitated looking at all the lease agreements again, because some of them were capped at 3%. So we need to look at what kind of increase we want to put on our T hangars and corporate hangars. Whether we want to limit it to 4%, which we had budgeted for, or increase that to cover some of our expenses.
So 2 items here. The annual adjustment number is the 7.6% increase. The other item that to address after this is going back then and amending our budget to reflect that increase. Because we have a deadline to get our budget to the city by a certain date, so that's why we went ahead and did what we did. We included 4%, not knowing exactly what that annual adjustment number would be. So what we need from the board is a decision, because as our bylaws state, that's something that we would look at and then decide either implement that or implement a different number.
When was the last time that we had a cost increase on the leases?
Last year. We did the CPI.
Yeah.
And
So if I
it was
understand
how much last year?
correctly from.
I don't recall
what Mike
exactly,
said.
3% maybe? Yeah.
So what you found in reviewing over the year and last year is that the airport expenses have increased by what,
7.6.
7.6%. And we looked at increasing by 4% the rents? Is that correct?
Our budget reflected 4% on our leases.
To increase by 4%.
Correct. Now,
But to really cover expenses, the leases should go 7.6.
well, if we look at what our increased expenses are, it's 7.6. But on top of that, as Mike just mentioned, we have this insurance bill, and that's the FMIT, that went from 75 to 88,000. Now, we have other insurances we pay as well. So we had factored in what we'd paid previously on all of our insurances, and we'd put that number in the budget thinking that would be enough. And we just got the renewal premium from FMIT at $88,000.
It always goes up.
So what, say a T hanger lease is how much? $235 a month or whatever? I don't know.
What is it?
It varies. A hanger is cheaper.
It varies by the
These-
size of the.
Right, I understand that, but just saying,
The smaller ones
30 to 400
are
and 13.
213. The smaller ones.
230 to 413.
When are
Okay.
you looking at renewing or when do these new leases take in effect?
They would take effect per the lease verbiage October the 1st, our new fiscal year.
Oh, no pressure. I would suggest that maybe looking at real numbers on how your leases are going to affect your budget and then what you have left over so that you can make an educated decision, being able to look at your budget instead of trying to factor out with their phones and whatnot.
And that's one reason I wanted us to talk about this tonight, because that does give us September to come back and look at the amended budget. So that's why I wanted you to understand that we're talking about two things, the annual adjustment and amending our budget to either reflect that annual adjustment and then what those numbers look like when Lori actually plugs that number in, then it automatically increases. For most of those hangars, I mean, they were $7 a month, some were $12 a month. And
I just did 7.6% on 235, and it was $17.86.
yeah,
I mean, that's not a whole lot of money when you're considering what you're renting. You know, because you can't go and get a 10 by 20 storage facility for $235.
well, Mr. Sherlock can tell you in comparison to
Other
Furlong, we're low.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm saying, why not do the 7.6%? Why should we eat the money when you're only talking about on a 235, and I don't know how many are in that area. Of course, the 400 is going to be, you know, 30.
Well, mine will go up by $28 a month. The real problem here is the tenants will shoulder all of the increase because we can't raise jet fuel. Jet fuel is a profit item, avgas is, but when you raise it, and people are funny about this, they'll spend $50 flying to another airport to save 5 cents a gallon. But it is unfairly burdened on just the tenants. We're not talking about raising gas prices.
Well, it's not just, remember now, it's not just the T-hanger tenants. It's our leases across the board.
Right, but I'm saying we're not going up on fuel. We can't do it there, and we can't.
That's right.
If we do, we get stuck with a load of 100 octane that'll never move.
Right, and
But I
so.
still think the 7.6 is fair, and I'm a tenant.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody gets mad about $18 and they have an airplane
They won't
here,
leave.
they're not going to leave.
There's a waiting list.
You know, I mean, so I personally would say go with the 7.6. I mean, why should we eat?
Subsidized.
Well, this is just discussion at the moment.
No, actually, we're having to come up with a number
No, we're gonna vote.
to do it.
We need to.
Task for coming up with a number to increase.
And you're going to say yay or nay.
Of course.
Okay,
Always throws me off. We don't have a motion in a second, we just start discussion, is that right?
and I apologize.
Right.
It's because here's what we did. Okay, and we do need a motion
I got it.
on the annual adjustment, okay?
Yeah, I would, in light of what Lynn said, and I'm not in opposition to what any of y'all have said necessarily. I would like to go back and think about it, because as the property insurance or the FMIT went up a lot more than we were expecting and accounting for. If we go raise everybody's T-hanger lease somewhere between $17 and $40, depending on which kind they have, I still don't think it's going to get us where we want to go with our budget. I'm not even sure it would be legal to subsidize it and absorb it, but I would like to think about that, but if y'all are ready to vote, I can.
Well, as much as I would like, if I may say this real quick, for us not to raise it all, it's just like a house you're renting. You don't necessarily go out and paint a rental house every year and put new carpet, put new floor. You just raise it because it's costing you more. But I will say this, in years past when there were financial difficulties, like when the housing bubble burst in 2008 and everybody was in trouble, there was a couple of years we didn't raise the rent at all. We could raise it from 0 to 3%.
During COVID.
And we knew people were having hardships and we didn't. And as much as I hate to eat this 7.6, because like I say, it's going to get mine closer to 400 a month. And the guys that are paying 1,000 a month, they'll go up 70 a month. But it's still reasonable. And our first objective, and this is where you can't recuse yourself from a vote, because we're voting on all leases. No, I'm stating something factual, because I asked this question of the attorney before.
Yeah.
I could vote no because I don't want mine to go up. You could vote no because you don't, but we're probably going to get overruled. But I think we should go up, because the first and foremost duty we have as board members is to make sure that this airport is financially stable.
That's right.
So I've said my say, but I'm for it.
All right, do we have a motion to move on the annual adjustment?
I'd like to make a motion that we move the annual adjustment to 7.6%.
And I'll second it.
All right. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And I just won't have any lights on in my house. Don't worry about me, though. I'll be okay.
Next time I make spaghetti, I'll invite you.
Thank you.
So, all right. So as far as the budget, what I will have Mike and Lori do, go back, plug these numbers in, we'll get that prepared, bring that back, bring a recommendation back. That's Mike's responsibility as airport manager, bring back a recommendation to the board of what that looks like.
Do we need to do that on the 21st when we have our special meeting, add it to that agenda? Since it's going to just be a quick thing and we need to get the budget to the city?
No, our budget's already there.
No.
We would just have to provide the amended budget.
Oh, okay.
No, the budget that you voted on will be what will be considered Monday night by resolution.
Okay. All right. That does complete all of my items now. So moving on quickly as we are getting lengthy here.
Now, he says quickly when it comes to me. I get you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
did you have something on that?
Just as an aside, I think this is, as a guy that's renting a hangar, one of our missionary couples is in the Park of the Palms, and that's been very stable for a long time. They raised their rent there from $740 a month for an upstairs, no elevator, 1-bedroom to $1,250 a month, and have added a $300 a month surcharge to each structure, each individual apartment, duplex, room, whatever, per month, which will be adjusted on a monthly basis as electricity costs goes up and down, sewer costs, water costs. And so I don't think 7.6 is a bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah. So,
All right. Thank you, Mr. Britton.
thank you, Chair.
Mr. Fryer.
Okay, I'll make mine really quick. The land that was cleared back here, Justin has almost got everything burned off that. We also cleared that hill. We did check it. I think you checked it. Justin checked it for gophers. There were no gophers. And he and I went out there and kind of leveled that out. He's now burning down here. We've got, one pile left burning, Mike? Correct. So we got that. Grass continues to be a challenge and I just heard it rumbling again. So every day the sun comes up, which is a good thing. But this rain, we're being hard pressed on this grass, but we are keeping up. And the last thing I've got is September the 18th is our annual airport inspection.
Correct.
From DOT.
DOT.
So what they do in that inspection is they would look at the glide slopes on the approaches to the runways. They'll look at the condition. And they actually are doing us a favor. We got a hit on the last thing because we asked them to give us a hit. And the reason we did that is the paints, the numbers on runway 11 and 29 were the worst, weren't they?
Correct.
They're oxidized, and when Justin tried to go out and pressure wash them, the glass bead that provides the reflectivity of the landing lights, it started coming off, and we said, well, we better stop. We tried bleach on there. So we talked to the guy at the last inspection. He says, if I score you marginal, maybe they'll get it moved up on your DOT budget to get the runway striping and all that done. But anyway, that inspection is on the 18th
Scott?
of September.
Brian, what was the name of that? What kind of inspection is that again?
It's FDOT airport inspection.
That's what
It's facility inspection, I guess.
It's an annual.
Yeah.
We do it every year, so,
Right.
yep.
Okay.
And that's all I've got.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Mr. Van Zandt.
All I had was adopting this or adding or subtracting from it was the pleasure of the.
Can we do that at that workshop thing or the meeting?
We can, we can even amend it there if, based on what we see.
Because we're going to get that going again and it'll be 11 o'clock for you.
Okay. I'm good with holding this till the 21st.
Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
We address the others. Okay. Mr. Ludwig.
We've pretty much covered both of my items that I had listed there. As from the topics we had earlier, so we pretty much covered both of those.
Okay,
I think anything else to add?
very good. All right. Colonel Allen.
Yes, sir. Pardon, thank you for the opportunity. Big Department of Emergency Management presence, doing about a 3-day exercise. They've got tractor trailer rigs. I think it was a big deal when they came through Keystone and Stark previously, earlier today. Mr. Seymour, we're still tracking, there's been a changing the guard on the environmental guys. There's a new guy, it's gonna be Matt Corby, that has been tasked to contact you. I will push you, I've given him your contact information, and I'll share his information with you as well. And he's pretty much gonna he will replace Catlett altogether. Catlett's gonna go to US Forestry, so he's still a subject matter expert out there. But the berries, and nothing for him on the timber, right? It was just the berries business?
It was both.
Okay.
It was both.
We'll have them close the loop on that. And we continue to wait on response on this, whether they're gonna turn the bombing range back on. So whatever that is, the T-45 and so many jet engines, and they're using a different package, et cetera. But we're still waiting for Mr. Scott, whoever the honcho is up at the FBO, up at Cecil Field. That's been the point of contact on behalf of Sinatra Naval Peace, Chief Naval Training. So we have yet to hear the end of that. So once we do get some idea, it'll obviously, it sounds like it'll only be daytime runs.
Scott Morrison?
No, sir, I think his last name was Scott.
Oh, okay.
But we will drill down into what the eaches and the R's of those that will impact anything out here. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that update. We have less than 15 minutes before we are cut off with our time frame on YouTube. So no pressure, Mr. Seymour.
Okay, real quick, the berry harvest. I got with a Mr. Frank Santner, Sandtner, from Peak Harvest. And after I came out and run the other day through the woods back here, there's a lot of palmettos back there, no berries. And Justin was with me, and we saw where somebody had been riding around out there, and it looked like they had been harvesting the berries. Well, when I sent the pictures to this Mr. Frank, he said, no, those were berries. For whatever reason, Northeast Florida is not making berries this year. And they're dropping off, leaving a dead stalk whole, but not a berry on the ground, nothing. And he said, no, nobody's been out there harvesting berries. So
Okay.
nobody's been out there harvesting, but somebody has been out there running around through the wood trails in the back. Now, I don't know if the tenants are allowed to do that. I didn't see it where they couldn't in the lease. But somebody is going out there and riding around in our AOA. And
We could put up game cameras.
if we catch them, we need to remove them because they shouldn't be out there. He said that he wants me to take some more pictures in August, September, and send to him, and he'll look at them and decide whether or not to come up to make a bid.
Sounds good.
He said, but they're not doing it. I would also like to recommend that we clear cut the harvest of all the trees in the front where we are talking about doing the new expansion by the new road. And because if we just do it in a 5-acre section here and a 5-acre section here, nobody's going to make any money. It's all just going to be burned, and we're going to have nothing. There's some planted pines in there, and Justin said that he knew some guy that did some stuff, pulp and all this, and he was going to get with that guy and get back with me on it. So
I think with the timber, what I'd like to see us do is, first of all, determine if they're marketable.
well, that's what I was talking
And then-
about, was getting with him and seeing maybe Mike Hardy, which is another timber guy, and see if they would come out and look and go, yeah, this is good, or nah, we're not gonna mess with it.
I'd like you to lean back on Matt Corby there at Blanding. I know he and Paul Catlett before had helped Chad with looking at timber that we had harvested or didn't harvest, only because a pine needs to be a certain diameter to be marketable.
Right.
So I'd like for us to look at that first rather than depend on a timber contractor, because they may be just looking for timber to haul to the mill, regardless of what it is, or chip it. So I think that's something we need to look at. And then I think we need to look at that whole area and come up with a plan of exactly which areas we're going to harvest. That's just my proposal.
Also, there was, when I went down the road, the new road that they put in, Bradford County put in, I noticed that there were the K-bar off to the side. Are those the ones that you were talking about getting?
Yeah, I got those placed
2 days ago.
Monday. Monday morning early, yes.
Okay.
Blocking the road now.
Okay, because
Yeah, we don't want that.
as I was coming out,
Strip.
a guy came from the firm area in a Subaru and turned and went down there.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you shouldn't do that. And I told Mike about it when I got back. And somebody had been down there doing burnouts and everything.
They've been going down there, and I had to call Jason Dodd and make sure, and they have got, I don't know if you noticed, the shoulders are seeded now. Not just the sod they put on
Right.
the road edge, but they actually got grass coming up. So I called Jason Friday afternoon, and he said, yep, it was okay to barricade it. I didn't know, they've still got equipment down there, but they're done. It's barricaded,
Okay.
and
Let's get with the firm.
I've already told them.
Y'all already talked? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I've already told them.
All right.
And some people, just in the defense real quick, some people were leaving the firm and thinking it was already an exit to the highway, because I watched a Mustang go down there, but he wasn't racing around. He just went down there like he's going the highway, and then he came right back out and went to the gate.
The other thing the last thing that I have is that we need to do the fire line. Because when I went riding the fence line, we have a fire load out there right now that if we had a wildfire situation come up, there would be no way in the world that we could have enough rainwater to fill up the ocean to put the fire out.
Why don't you coordinate with Mike about getting a plan together on, because I know we used to bush hog all the fence lines and other fire
And why are
lanes.
we not using
The disc.
the disc?
It was because when we had the Air Ops group, it made it hard for them to get down fence lines in some of the vehicles. And besides, on the other side of the fence, especially on the Blanding side, they always keep theirs disked. So there's that fire break. So
Yeah, out here they are.
I'll just add.
I just went down there the other day. It was not done.
Okay.
well, let's coordinate that back with Matt.
Last time I saw it was, but we'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
It hadn't been done, and Justin said that, they said not to do it anymore, and I'm like, well, I don't know, you gotta have an 8-foot buffer.
All right.
That's not accurate. Nobody said not to do it anymore. It was whenever we had a time that we could do that, that something else wasn't present.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Seamer. Mr. Sherbach,
Just really quick.
you got 6 minutes.
About 3 minutes.
To be on camera anyway, so.
Mr. Fryer already covered most of the airport updates. There are two things there's one thing I want to bring up. We have a metal building out here behind Rockland that houses a water softener system. And the building has fallen down. We've talked about this in the past, I believe. But we've got a couple of estimates on replacing that building, and because it's an odd size, we could either put a building on top of it or try to demolish the whole thing and start over from scratch. But there's a better idea. Put a building on top of that, stem wall. We got a 4-course stem wall, and we have 2 bids on building on top of that stem wall. One of them is a $4,300, and they will build it, and they have to bring it out, then we'll have to run a crane to get it put on. And another bid was for $3,895. They will build it on site. So that eliminates the crane they will put it on the stem wall and build it in place. So I think that I'd really like to go with that. Do we need a motion for that? Mr.
Yeah, that exceeds our,
the $25.
the limit that the airport manager has, so we have to bring that to the board for a
Well,
vote.
we gotta have one more bid though.
And we have
Hard to
another
have
bid,
3
but it's
bids.
even hard, it's the
As long
bids
as you
for
get 3
something
bids.
different. We've got another bid for $3,600,
But
but
it's
that's
for
a
a
stock
building?
Yes.
10 by
As long as you
14.
got 3 bids, we're
Okay.
good.
Yep.
So which one is your recommendation?
Got
The
3,000.
cheapest one, the $3,895.
Yeah.
Because they'll build it in place. We won't have to pick it up. We won't have to do anything with it. Just turn it loose. And that will enclose a water softener system and utilize the existing stem wall.
And you're sure that's a firm price there?
Yes.
Okay. I make a motion that we fund a portable building for the water softener site from Handy House in the amount of $3,895.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Ms. Lynn, city updates.
City Council will be meeting Monday, August 7th. The resolution for the airport budget will be on that agenda among some other things. The budget workshop will be August 21st. That will be council's final revision to the budget for budget hearing on September 11th, plus our regular scheduled council meeting, and our second budget hearing and adoption will be September 25th. The only other news that I have is that late last calendar year, council did make a motion and allowed me to apply for a smart city study through the North Florida TPO that was granted. We have started that study, and then we've started planning our meetings for what that study is going to look like. We'll conclude by December 31st. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we have completed all of our agenda items, so we will consider ourselves adjourned at 7:58.
Good job.
Wow.
The blood on the floor. Good night.
That was a heck of a 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Lightning round.
Good job, David.